Hi, Tim Sells here with another video. In this series, I'm talking about what prevents somebody from becoming a rep. This particular video originated out of me doing a survey in a small team and them telling me what is the most common objections. And it had to do with the prospect still believes that people at the top or that get in early or that most make money or scam or few make money. Even though I have utterly crushed those and shown that they're false, it still persists. And so I'm going to kind of tease you with, will network marketing ever be popular in the media, and why or why not? In earlier videos, I've talked about this before, and I gave a more direct answer. This time I'm going to open up the scope a little bit so that you can get a little bit more of the information to the previous video. You wouldn't have needed to see that video. It is just that I wanted to just let you know I'm going on a wider scope here. And I want to give you the reason why this is vital. When I know what's going on in the world, it helps me to, number one, not be distracted by people not understanding the true reality. All right. And so I'm talking about the prospects. I'm talking about reps that get upset or something like that because a prospect brings up something that I know my rights as a human being. All right. So that gives me great resolve. And then not getting distracted by silly stuff like red versus blue, racism, and all of the noise out there. I can just keep my stability and continue moving forward on what I do. Know who is doing harm and avoiding that group. All right, and you'll understand that in a little bit. And then also it strengthens my resolve that I'm in the right business, doing the right things. All right, so that's the purpose that I hope that you end up getting from this, is that same resolve and understanding. So I'm going to start at the true hierarchy. All right, and so this the people that I've shown this to, they kind of are stunned and they can't quite get this idea out of their head afterwards. And so here's the hierarchy. So you've got God, Creator. All right. And there's a slash there just because I'm allowing any religion to look at this. But somehow you got here on earth, all right? And you came here as either a man or a woman, all right? And each are equal. There isn't a debate about that. It's man or woman. I can't have a child. My wife can have a child. That makes us a little bit different. Okay, but God, or the Creator, created man or woman, and we're equal. We're all equal. I'm no greater than or less than any other man or any other woman. Okay? This is going to, as I go down here, you're going to understand why it's so vital for you to look at it and get that resolve right here, right there, is you are no greater than me and I'm no greater than you. Period. Okay? That gives you the level of respect you're supposed to pay to another. They're the same as me. Man and or woman create government for the people. By the people. So in other words, it's by the people we form a government to govern all of us. Right? If they do their job the way we want them to do, we keep them. If they don't, we get rid of them. That is the purpose of government in the United States. And that's all that it is. The government created corporations. In fact, they incorporated in 1871, United States of America. All right, but governments create corporations. And government and corporations create titles, names, words. Titles such as president, vice president, secretary, governor, lieutenant governor, taxpayer, employee, citizen, individual, resident, police, agent, FDA, FTC, CIA, FBI, ATF, EPA, IRS, FEMA, TSA, Department of, DOD, Department of Justice, the Fed, the soldier, etc. I hope you can kind of get a direction of where I'm going with this here is that you see that this is below, from a hierarchy standpoint, man created man or woman. All right? And somebody comes along and, I don't know, I'm just going to grab this Canon lens and say that it's a badge. And so I'm going to put a badge that authorizes me to kill. That makes me better than you. You see the flimsiness that this thing lies on? The, lack of thinking that through as a concept. I'm a soldier. I get a badge put on my shoulder. I get a weapon put in my hand. And they say, kill them. Why? They're the bad guys. Okay. Right? That's a negotiation inside your head, or it's not. So if you're drilled and trained and over again, and as soon as somebody points out that person's your senior, but they're still a man or a woman, and they tell you that's the bad guy, kill him. As well as any other thing that goes on inside of a corporation from an employee standpoint. All right, so, so your job is to blank. Well, I don't really feel comfortable with doing that. Well, then you're fired. All right, so the vulnerability that sits there when you're asked to do something that is against your ethics or morals. So then, no man or woman has a right to tread on another. Okay? Remember, each are equal. And so therefore, no man has the right. All right. So obviously, I believe in protecting myself and I believe in protecting my family. If somebody is going to do harm to my family and it's imminent, then we're gonna go at it. Okay? And so that's the vice versa with this right here, is that no man or woman has a right to tread on me or me on another. But if someone is going to, then it's a threat. And then that's where you make that decision that I authorize myself to stop this fight. Okay. And then the kind of the rule that I want you to think of it is that if I can't make you do it, then you can't make me do it. Okay, so if I can't make you put a badge on or a mask, then you can't make me do it. Right? So back and forth. It's got to be neutral. It's got to be where it's that equal thing. And that's, once you get that resolve, number one, you're not cocky anymore. And number two, you don't violate other people. You let them live their life. That's what the entire Constitution, Bill of Rights, was founded upon, is that simplicity. That's what the founders were writing about. When you read the federal papers, this is the discussions that were going on. And it's just incredible. Okay. And so if I can't tax some of these people, then they can't tax me, right? It's the way it should be. So the other thing, and I just want to share this with you, the reason that I kind of talk passionate about this badge is that was my life, right, in the military. And I remember looking at the flimsiness of the badge and saying, man, I can go down and get a sheriff badge at the Dollar General store. And I remember saying to myself, I want to be on the construction side of life instead of the destruction side of life. That was the concept that I had in my head. And so when I was looking at what I was going to do next, I wanted to make sure that I didn't get wrapped up into one of these where I was doing something that was going to harm another, that was going to violate somebody's rights, or that I was going to be put in a position where I'm going to get fired if I don't do something. Okay, so you got you got your debt lined up, you got your rent lined up, you got all this stuff that's dependent upon this job, and then you do something because you have a choice. Either I lose my home or I, do this thing that I don't really want to do to another person. And so I want to talk to you a little bit about how to identify that. So in any group, organization, there's always an intention. Notice that's not attention, it's intention line. That's just a ruler to remind me that if you were to take, you're always looking for this line in any organization or group that you're working with or planning on or thinking about or anything else. And so you're looking to plot activities, okay? So, and I talked about this in the earlier video. You're looking for the intention, and it's often hidden. How is it hidden? Well, we are a progressive group. Oh, well, that makes logical sense. But what they do, it plots off the line. So you have this idea of what progressive means here. And so you're going to plot their actions. And you find an action that, kind of ends up off the line, no longer on the line. And you're like, And you start seeing it's kind of one of those scatter graphs where they're heading that direction. Hang on now. How do I define that? You see, that's the way, and it's what I'm going to be doing for you in this video, is I'm going to plot a group for you to show you exactly how I identify different things, and I don't get wrapped up in the wrong group, okay? So actions reveal true intentions, not words. And so it's far better for you to look at the actions, plot them, and see what direction they're going. That's their intention. It doesn't matter what they say, okay? Like, I can look at you and talk to you, but I can point this way, right? And any individual is capable of hiding their true intentions through words, but their actions are always going to reveal it. But you got to plot enough of them, because sometimes they're pretending down a particular line, and then when you're too far down the line, then you notice, oh, wow, I didn't know that was what this was about, okay? And so I have seen people talk about socialism, Marxism, Fabianism, collectivism, Bolshevism, progressiveness, or ism, and it's all the same thing. It's just simply when corporations become the government, right? And they are controlling. They want to control the public. That's all the same thing. So if any action is towards controlling another person, well, wait a minute now, man are created, equal. Man and woman are equal. And so, no, this control thing doesn't work for me. And that's when you bow out and you say, hey, I'm not going to work for this company. I'm not going to do this thing. Okay? So plot actions on a line to reveal their true intention. Okay? And so individual, groups, corporations, governments, whatever it is that you're wanting to evaluate, that's the way that I do it. I remember in one of my other videos, I was walking you through how you pick up a piece of data, and it may seem interesting to you, and then you find another piece of data that lines up to that piece of data, and that's what I'm talking about. And I got a lot of questions on that video. A lot of people were commenting, and they were asking me questions. People were private messaging me and stuff. And so I just thought that I would plot this and show you exactly how I go about it, so that it can help you, all right? All right, so let's look at some actions that point to it. So this was the slide that I showed in the prior video, and the Federal Reserve generated an enormous amount of additional currency in America. This is going back to 1960, and this goes up to 2020, and based upon where we are, it would probably double where that is. And so that is a big change, substantial change of currency, volume of currency in the country. And so I just wanted to walk you through how this happens. All right, so I'm going to go back, and it's Mayer Rothschild. He's a financier. Money lender would be the best way you to look at it. You go down to your local bank and you say, hey, I want to buy a car. Can I get a loan on it? All right. So you can also imagine that where a government, Rothschild comes in and he says, hey, I can loan you money for a war or whatever it may be. Okay. So Rothschild in 1801, he was the central bank in Germany, Austria, Italy, France, Britain, the Bank of England, and he also subsidized wars. So in other words, quite wealthy. And he was basically the currency provider for these countries. He stood up in Parliament and he made a statement in Britain, and he said, I care not what puppet is placed upon the throne of England to rule the empire on which the sun never sets. It's because of the time change. It never sets. The man who controls Britain's money supply controls the British Empire, and I control the British money supply. So he's basically saying that because he funds the money, he's the person who controls the British Empire. In let me go to this. Rothschild's family mantra is control the world by controlling the world's money supply. End of the 1800s, Rothschild controlled half of the world's wealth, including the Catholic Church worldwide. All right. In 1791, First Bank of the United States was put in by Rothschild. All right. And then 1832, Andrew Jackson removed the bank, saying that it was unconstitutional. And it was reestablished in 1913. And ever since then, we've had that bank. 1875, working through a partner, Jacob Schiff, financed John D. Rockefeller. This is going to become very important in just a minute because each one of these points that I'm doing here, I'm plotting on a line so that you can see the intention line. Right? So Rothschild funded through this person, but this went to here to here. Rockefeller's Standard Oil Company and Harriman's Railroad Empire and Andrew Carnegie's Steel Empire. And so some of the biggest industries that were being established at that point in time, Rothschild was funding. And then helped New York financier J.P. Morgan to establish European branches in exchange. Okay, so J.P. Morgan, he was a banker. He wanted to fund some stuff over in Europe. And Rothschilds gave him access. And in exchange, J.P. Morgan gave Rothschilds access to control the banking industry in New York, which pretty much controlled America. In 2001, only 7 nations in the world were not controlled banking-wise by the Rothschild family. Okay, that's how huge they are. Okay, so China, Iran, Afghanistan, North Korea, Sudan, Cuba, and Libya are not controlled by them. Maybe Russia. I read an article that had to do with that they had paid off their debt. And so maybe they've also separated. Okay, so now, a lot of times when you have any kind of discussion like this, people will say, oh, that's a conspiracy theory, if they can differentiate the two. It's the reason that I am quoting the person who did it, right? So don't take these words lightly. So 3 years after signing the Federal Reserve Act, he's the person who signed it. He said this, "I am a most unhappy man. I have unwittingly ruined my country. A great industrial nation is controlled by its system of credit. Our system of credit is concentrated. The growth of the nation, therefore, and all our activities are in the hands of a few men. We have come to be one of the worst ruled, one of the most completely controlled and dominated governments in the civilized world. No longer a government by free opinion, no longer a government by conviction and the vote of the majority, but a government by the opinion and duress of a small group of dominant men." And by duress means the use of force or threats, compulsion. So what do we have here? Okay, so we have a group, and that group feels as though that they are better than another. And they're going to exert their force over others. That's what's going on here, right? Just wanted to come back to that hierarchy, because people think that because they've got more money, that they're senior to. They're not. They are when somebody gets in debt to them, right? That's the way that they feel. All right, so on December the 23rd, 2 days before Christmas in America, 1913, Federal Reserve Act was signed. It's neither federal nor is it a reserve. It's just some bankers. You and I could set up a bank and loan money to somebody for a car. All right, it would have been the same thing, except they got access to control the money supply of America. Transfer of power to create money from the American government to a group of bankers. Congressman Charles Lindbergh Sr. warns, quote, "This act establishes the most gigantic trust on earth. When the president signs this act," in other words, he's talking about it, he's trying to tell people, don't do this, right? "When the president signs this act, the invisible government," if you've heard shadow government, if you've heard invisible government, that's what he's talking about. "By the money power proven to exist by the money trust investigation will be legalized." In other words, this money trust investigation was a long investigation, had J.P. Morgan in it and so forth. They were asking a lot of questions and such, and it was revealed that there was going to be an invisible government. Okay. So what really happened here? President Woodrow Wilson handed the intention line. Okay, so we had a constitution, everybody's plotting along the line, man is equal, blah, blah, blah. We're heading down that line. He handed the intention line of America to the Federal Reserve that changed the direction. You see how that is. But nobody knew that changed. And so everybody's out there still thinking that America is the same as 1776. But they didn't realize what happened here. I heard a saying where it was that the people deserve the government they get, or the government that, like a group of people will get the government that they deserve. In other words, how involved, how understanding, in other words, like when you fully understand what's going on, and if you had a media news group, organization that was giving you facts that you could understand so that you could then be the people who are doing the thing for the government that needs to be done so that it is working for the people, right? And so that's what wasn't there in 1913, 2 days before Christmas. The followers of the Constitution were warning people. They were saying the coming money trust, here's the National Reserve, and these are different buildings. U.S. Treasury Building, the Capitol, the White House, the Stock Exchange, the local banks, farms, and factories. They were saying this group is going to gobble them up and control them, thus controlling the people. All right? And that's kind of what happened. So when I was talking to you in the other video having to do with inflation, I was trying to describe this very good illustration. And that is that the bankers they have knobs and, blinkers and windshield wipers and knobs inside, just like inside your car. They're able to move around the economy. They're able to throw it into a bubble, bust. They can build another bubble in something else in the way that they control the currency. So this institution wants us in debt. They've succeeded. 80% of Americans are in debt. So that would be something that you would plot. How many people are overweight? How many people are sick and on medication? How many people you would be able to just create that perfect line and see where it's heading. It was a theory that it was going to happen, and then you see it happening, okay? And so one of the things that I'd brought up had to do with BlackRock, who was basically, it's the Federal Reserve, and the Federal Reserve uses those people. There's 3 of those people that are in the White House that work for BlackRock, and they are purchasing about 15% of the nation's real estate right now. And so it's really an odd thing to be going on. Okay, so here's the way that I view this. All right, so if they can squeeze down wages, they can, jockey around. They can also make it mandatory to have a high wage, but that's going to put a whole lot of businesses out of business because their margins only sit at around maybe 5-10%, right? So the average profit on the stock exchange is right around 10 to 12%. The better ones are above that, but the average comes around that. So 8 to 12. And so they can control a lot. So what does that do for you? What does that do in terms of your understanding? If I don't control my income, I'm vulnerable. So if somebody can fire me, if somebody can cut my wages, if somebody can, control that knob, it's going to affect me. If someone can control my wage, I'm vulnerable. All right. So what I'm talking about here is that if I can't control my income, so in network marketing, I can, let's say, have my transmission fall out of my truck, and I say, wow, you know what? I got to get to work, and I can create the money for a transmission. In a typical wage situation, you're going to have to do without something for a while in order to create that money. All right. If I don't control my rent, meaning if I'm not a homeowner, I'm vulnerable. Increases, in terms of like rent money, eviction notices, I get kicked out. I got to pull my kids out of school and find a new place for them and all of that, right? And so now you can see that how they can control a person is, it creates a vulnerability in people. And especially when they're in debt, if they want to crush the economy. Okay, so because now they lose that thing that they've been paying on for a long time. Okay, so now let's enter into the scene, John D. Rockefeller. His famous quote, for me, is famous. Competition is a sin. It's something that he just despised. And it's not, you're going to see it's not just a quote, okay? In 1870, remember I told you that the Rothschilds funded Standard Oil. He owned 90 to 95% of all U.S. oil in America. And he was also shipping it off to wars we were in, providing for the enemy. In 1896, contributes $250,000 to Republican William McKinley's presidential campaign against the Democrat, a supporter of the antitrust legislation. So in other words, the Democrat wanted to have the antitrust break apart his company. And he didn't want that. So he funded the Republican candidate. Well, he won, McKinley won, but then he was assassinated. And so the person who took over was Theodore Roosevelt, and Theodore Roosevelt took Standard Oil and then broke it up. And then they ended up breaking it up again. And so these were all It eventually came out to be Chevron, Exxon, BP, and Marathon. So now you can kind of see here that that he dominated. He dominated because of the money that was given to him by Rothschilds. And in 1902, creates 198 trusts in coal, sugar, and other industries. Okay, so you can see that he's diversified. So back here, when this happened, he was like, all right, well, I've divided it all up into different organizations and everything. I'm going to take my money. I'm going to invest it elsewhere. Trust in coal, sugar, and other industries. With assistance from Andrew Carnegie. All right, remember, Rothschild funded the steel industry for Andrew, the railroad industry, and Rockefeller Institute. So let me say this again. So with assistance from Andrew Carnegie, Rockefeller Institute for Medical Research, now Rockefeller University, was established, creating centralized medicine and medical training. That's what it created. Okay, so he didn't really know anything about medicine, but he created the largest organization in it, right? He funded $100 million towards this whole operation. At the time, natural and herbal medicines were the standard. Like vitamins, there was a lot of research going on at that time having to do with vitamins. They were cataloging it in the government, laying out and saying, what does vitamin A do? They would find something, and you know, there was just a whole lot of research going on at the time. And there were a lot of doctors who primarily were working in holistic situations, right? So half of them, approximately half of the doctors in medical colleges were practicing holistic medicine at the time. Natural cures were mocked and demonized, and then some doctors were jailed. All right, so how does that work? Well, if they centralized medicine and said, okay, so this is the curriculum that you have to learn, and what is it? Well, it's prescribing this and doing this surgery. And if you are a doctor, you're in a town and you're working with people that you know, you go to the same church, you show up to the same football games and everything else, right? It's community. And then this person is going to suggest something else that's off policy. Well, they lose their license. Why? Because this organization creates the licensing, causes each state to mandate it. That is how this all happened. If network marketing sells and promotes health, then that's a sin, right? To Rockefeller. So now you can kind of see where I'm going with this is that this is against what they want, right? There's a lot that's against what they want. Okay, so in 1913, Senator Nelson Aldrich, father-in-law to John D. Rockefeller, pushes Federal Reserve Act through Congress just before Christmas break, 23 December. All right, so I had to add in that it was his father-in-law that pushed that through. J.P. Morgan dies. Rockefeller Foundation formed the Federal Reserve Bank. Shares were in great part owned by Rockefeller National City Bank, Chase National, which is also John D. Rockefeller. Okay, so now you can see that John D. Rockefeller had a whole lot to do with the Federal Reserve. All right, so that's where all of that wealth came from, and all of that power came from, and all of the control and the creation of the oil industry, the creation of having to do with the whole medical community, right? All right, and so then you can also see J.P. Morgan's, First National Bank, Lehman Brothers. Remember when Lehman Brothers got in trouble and they said too big to fail? And they basically printed money and pulled them out of it. Now you can understand all of this and why it happened the way that it did. Okay, so this guy is a real patriot, Louis McFadden. He is the chairman of the House Committee of Banking and Currency. Quote, when the Federal Reserve Act was passed, the people of these United States did not perceive that a world banking system was being set up here. a super state controlled by international bankers and international industrialists acting together to enslave the world for their own pleasure. Every effort has been made by the Fed to conceal its powers. But the truth is, the Fed has usurped, that means jumped above, the government. It controls everything here, meaning in Congress, and it controls all our foreign relations. It makes and breaks governments at will. All right, that's quite a statement. And where he sat right at the spot where he knew the effect that they were going to have. And this was new to me, which is the world banking system. He hadn't realized the breadth of how many countries they owned. Concerning, and he keeps on, this is still in the quote, concerning the Great Depression and the country's acceptance of FDR, Franklin D. Roosevelt, New Deal, he asserts it was no accident. It was a carefully contrived occurrence. The international bankers sought to bring about a condition of despair here so they might emerge as the rulers of us all. So that's kind of like the crashing the stock market, shrinking the money supply. Nobody could get a job. Banks collapsed. And then they're able to come in and scoop up and buy those companies at pennies on the dollar, right? That's what did happen. They got the prime real estate, they got the lakefront properties, the oceanfront properties, the big corporations that had collapsed because the stock market collapsed. This is Kennedy, and he says, there's a plot in this country to enslave every man and woman and child. Before I leave this high and noble office, I intend to expose this plot. And that was 7 days before his assassination. So you can see how powerful these people are, how controlling they are. And if you'll remember that lineup that I showed you where you got man and woman created equal, they felt as though that they could take his life if he exposed them. A lot of wrongdoing going on, right? Woodrow Wilson, in a book that he wrote called New Freedom, he says, the government, which was designed for the people, has got into the hands of bosses and their employers, the special interests. An invisible empire has been set up above the forms of democracy. All right, so I'm back to this image again. This is the pretended hierarchy. Well, God's out of the picture. They've made that very, very clear that they want to remove the family unit. They want to remove religion because they want themselves to be the religion, that they're believing in it. Because they don't want they want everybody's attention, these are arrows, they want everybody's attention heading right straight and obliging, if you will, following, singing the mantra of the big bankers. And so they don't want the family unit. They don't want the religion groups because people are honoring God or something, and that's off what they want. They want you straight towards them. All right. So you've got local and foreign entities. That is the senior at the top. And then you've got government to use titles to control the people. And then those are all those titles. Quote, this is pretended, I'm better than you because I have a badge that authorizes me to kill or arrest you. Okay, so that's it. And then below that is the people. And it's completely upside down. And that was what Woodrow Wilson was talking about with that it's now the invisible empire has been set up above the forms of democracy. Okay, so this is one that really hit me, and I kind of like, whoa. The trouble, and this is again with Woodrow, the trouble with our present political conditions is that we need some man who has not been associated with the governing class and the governing influences of this country to stand up and speak for us. We need to hear a voice from the outside calling upon the American people to assert again their rights and prerogatives in the possession of their own government. Okay? So, prerogative, by the way, means a prior or exclusive right or privilege. And so at one time we did have it. And there's one thing that I know because I went to a training one time for crowd control in the military. And I can assure you that there is no win in that. When they were trying to train me, I'm like, all right, I learned a really good lesson here, and it's not how to manage a crowd. You can't manage a crowd. If enough people disagree, then there's no position unless it goes too far, okay? And that's the problem with it, and what I mean by it goes too far. In other words, I have found the very best way. I'll save that conclusion until the next slide. But what he's basically asking is for us all. And it's not some man, it's some man or some woman, because that's the senior, right? And he's talking about it's not being a government person, a professional government person. It's just like me and you who exercise the true hierarchy that we established that. We establish it in our home. We establish it with our kids. We establish it with the church. We establish it everywhere because that's the original founding fathers. So if we promoted this, we would be popular. We would be in the news. In fact, we'd be on CNN. Government intervention, yay. Monopolies, yes, love to work for monopolies. Medicine only, yeah, get rid of it. Give me GMO foods. Give me insulin instead of lowering my carbs. Censorship, okay? Yeah, I don't have the right to say what I want to say. Food control, right? Like, you ought to have seen, it was probably about, 7 years ago or something like that. I was training some guys having to do with weight loss. And I told them, I said, look, if you go to your grocery store and you get your vegetables and you look at them and they're from Mexico or they're from New Zealand, if you look at your meat and you say, oh, well, that's from New Zealand or that's from here, just think about what you're going to have to do if the food supply is cut. And I just showed them a freeway. I just showed them a map. And I just want you to imagine that this is a freeway that runs across the United States. And probably 10 miles or about 3 miles or so up the road, I have a grocery store there. And I go into there and I look at it and it says Guatemala on it, on the avocados or something. And so I'm like, wow, okay, so those wouldn't be replaced. In other words, if your grocery store is not getting their food from locals, then those locals can't be in business as farmers. You get that idea? And so demand from your grocery store that's closest to you to get local food, all right? And if you have to, go to farmer's market to find these, do so. It's the best way to you see, mission number one in the military is cut food supply. Right? That's what we want to do in the military if we're trying to beat an enemy, is cut food supply. And so you got to look at where your food is, right? If the freeway gets shut off where trucks can't get in. All right. So that's what I mean by food control. And wars. In another video, I'm going to talk about the propaganda and how wars were created. All right. So if we promoted these things, then we would be popular. But the question that you've got to ask is, what track do you want to be on? Because on this one over here, it's about freedom. It's about individual wealth, the ability for an individual to create wealth, home ownership and land as well, health and medical freedom. Okay, so in other words, I'm not saying that we get rid of medicine in any way. Just my choice. Okay, so if I got in a car wreck and I broke my leg, first thing I want to do is go to the hospital. I want to see a doctor. I don't want to see a homeopathic person, right? But if I want to lower my cholesterol, then Okay, fine. I'm going to prefer to take fish oils or something first. If that doesn't work or other things don't work, then I'll look at it. Local farms, peace, not war. Okay, so now you kind of get this whole idea is that when I started this, why do I have such resolve in network marketing? Is because I plotted on the line what the network marketing industry, what the company is heading towards, and you need to do that for your company. What are they after? And this is what I want to promote. I don't want to be in a business that promotes anything but this. All right? Yes, I have options. I have abilities. I have things. I could be a mercenary. I could be, I could really, really help this group, but I don't want to help that group. I want to help this group because I feel better as a human being because of it. So please comment down below. Tell me what you think about this video. I'm not going to apologize for it being long because I can assure you, you can just multiply 20 times however long this video is. And that's about how much time that I spent trying to document every single thing so that you knew that it was actually factual. All right. And so, but comment down below and let me know what you think about it. How do you feel about being in the network marketing industry? Are you proud of it? How do you communicate that to a prospect to let them know, hey, you know what? We've made our choice. We know what track we're on. All right. So thanks so much for watching. If you haven't subscribed, you might think about doing so. Thank you.